So, so Lisa, I was reading some articles recently through different publications about the amount of people that are starting to look into doing forbearance of their mortgage. I thought that might be an interesting topic for us to talk about today.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about that quite a bit, and whether it's a good idea and how it's being used, but also how it's going to affect the housing market in the near future, and even later. And I think those things are really good to keep in mind when looking for relief and how much we need.
Yeah, Diane talked about that when we had her on as well last week. And so I read an article today that said that the number of people going with forbearance has greatly increased in just the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
They're expecting that number to continue to go up and up. And I think it's important that people understand that if they can afford to pay their mortgage, they need to do that, because all you're really doing is, the forbearance program, at least, all you're really doing is just kicking it down the road. It's not going to help you in the long run. I mean, if you can't afford it, that's a different conversation.
Right.
Well, and they need to.
Yeah, and I think we know that there's a lot of unemployment, especially here in Las Vegas, and that if you can't, I don't have 6 months worth of. I personally do not have 6 months worth of mortgage payments in the bank. I can pay my mortgage now, and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to continue to do that. But it is, as a tool to help people from, going into foreclosure, I think it's great, because I think we learned from the 2008 recession that if the banks had worked with people would have stayed in their homes if they could have. But because there were a lot of loans that were coming due, on adjustable rate mortgages and short-term loans that people thought they could refinance, and the banks weren't willing to do it, so many people lost their homes. However long this period is going to last, hopefully that's not going to happen. And it's important for people to have the reassurance that if they can't make a couple of payments, they can do so safely. But one of the things, we were on that webinar, and one of the things that they talked about was how this is going to affect credit, in the longer term. Right now, they're telling us it's okay, it's not going to affect our credit, but we both know that rules and how credit is evaluated are not static. They change all the time. And one thing that I'm thinking of right now is that people who had done short sales and supposedly were going to be able to buy again in 2 years because they had the capacity to make payments. They just either couldn't refinance the house when they were being required to, or the house had fallen so much in value they were never going to make it up. And then all of a sudden, and that was the established credit rule at the time, and then it changed. And for people who had, I think it was conventional loans, that changed from 2 years to 4 years and foreclosed a whole lot of people out of the real estate market that could have been participating. And one of the things I think we are hopefully watching today is how what decisions are made today affect the real estate market, because I think we could be one of the leaders in coming out of this recession. The housing could be, as long as credit credit isn't tightened up too much, and we're already seeing that it is.
Yeah, actually, Diane talked about that too. She already said that they're starting to, on certain programs and on certain loans, they're raising the necessary credit scores to qualify for those.
They've done that.
The lower 600s to the middle upper 600s.
Well, I think FHA is at 680, and it used to be 640, and that's a significant change. But I think we should also go back to talking about forbearance and how it's going to affect the mortgage servicers. That's the people who we make our mortgage payments to, and they take care of our escrow accounts and everything. And like you said, 6% of all loans have, I guess, been accepted into the forbearance program. But the mortgage servicers still have to pay the investors who bought the loans and also our homeowners insurance, our taxes, and whatever else is being paid out of that escrow account. And those guys are going to have to continue paying those, even though their income is going down.
Yeah. You know what? There's definitely going to need to be some intervention by the Fed at some level, and I think a lot, because otherwise there's going to be a problem, because those people aren't going to be collecting enough money to stay open themselves.
Can you say that again, Andy? Because your audio cut out.
Oh, I said I think there's definitely going to need to be some intervention by the federal government at some level, because from everything I'm seeing by the experts and everything I'm reading, it's going to be an issue at some point for especially a lot of the smaller mortgage servicers. They're not taking in the money they need to keep their doors open.
Right.
I mean, they have supposedly, I think I read that they all have several months worth of money to get by. But once this goes past that, it's going to be an issue. And like some of the loans, I've talked to somebody not that long ago, and they were saying like they offered them a forbearance of like 4 months. Well, they were people in the service industry, bartenders, waitresses. That's not going to be long enough for them, probably, because even when we reopen, hopefully in a couple of months, things are going to be slow. I mean, people aren't going to be making much money for a little while.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was unusual about the way they passed the first, when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac came out and said we're going to institute this forbearance, is you don't have to actually show a hardship like we did when we were doing short sales. We had to have a letter, and we had to have bank statements and everything else showing loss of income, and they didn't require that for this. We can really hope that most people are going to be on the honor system and only ask for it if they really need it. But it's should you make your mortgage payment or put the money in the bank? Those are really good, questions people are going to have. And I think that's probably why they didn't require people to show immediately that they had loss of income, because people have been working for a while, but now are being furloughed, especially here in our gaming industry, where the staffs, a lot of staff was let off right away, but the people who are actually on the business side continued to work for quite a while, and now they're being furloughed as well. So it's a really difficult situation, but I understand that there's the possibility that there's money to help the servicers through should they run into trouble, because even though it's really kind of a domino effect where one decision that is made can affect other businesses further down and increase the economic hardship that we're having and will continue to have.
Yeah. People, I think in general, the general public at least, they need to be educated, and hopefully they'll watch things like this, other things, to see that there's really not a benefit to not paying your mortgage. It's not a benefit.
For sure.
As long as you can afford to pay it. Yeah. As long as you can afford to pay it. I mean, all you're doing is moving the payments down the road. That's not going to help you in the long run. You're not saving money. If you sell your house, you'll have less equity because you didn't make some of it. In the long run, it's all going to break even. If you can't afford it, like I said, that's a different conversation.
One of the things I think, I have a hard time getting my head around is when I get a home loan, I imagine this nice little package, and it gets sold and the servicer starts servicing it. But, when it's sold, it's not just my mortgage or your mortgage that's been sold. It's a whole group of them, and they're sold to investors. And the reason that they do that is because it makes home ownership more available. And that's the point of like the Fannies and Freddies and Ginnie Maes, is they are able to package the loans and then sell them to investors who then get, they get money, they invest. That's why people do that, is, they get money on that particular investment, which means that the money that original loan, which was made from private money or the Fed making money available to banks to buy and then loan again, which is also something that Diane talked to us about last week. That's why the servicers need to keep paying out that that money, because because people invested in those mortgages, so that more money can be made available and homeownership can be made available to more people. And anytime there's a mess up in that, then we can see lots of people being hurt, and less people being able to participate in owning a home and having a stable place to live.
Yes, I would agree with all that. Yeah, hopefully, I mean, obviously everything's ongoing right now. It's pretty new and it's different, it's unique. We've never been in this position, but hopefully as things roll along, cooler heads will prevail and we'll come up with everything rolls along, like you said, so that housing can actually be a leader in our recovery.
A leader in our recovery. Yeah, Andy's audio is cutting out a little tiny bit.
I don't know why. Sorry.
I think it's the internet stuff, which I don't understand. I understand markets, but I don't understand the internet. Anyway, yeah. So we're going to keep providing these little overviews of what's going on with the market, so that people can have a little more information without having to do the deep dive that we get to into learning how different how decisions that are made and the decisions that people make and also institutions make are able to react. Something interesting I learned while we were preparing for this is what's the difference between Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and Ginnie Mae. And I think it was Fannie that came into existence in the 30s, when there was lots of foreclosures during the recession. And at that time, it was only private money that was available for people to get a mortgage to buy property. And so then they put the government behind it and that's when they first started packaging mortgages and selling them. And then, I said Fannie, right? Freddie came along later, like in the 60s or something like that, to also provide more of that support. But interestingly enough, Ginnie Mae, and these are most of the loans that have gone into forbearance recently, Ginnie Mae packages government-backed loans like FHA and VA to be sold off. I thought that was kind of interesting that what the history behind those. We throw those names around, but don't really exactly know what they mean or what they do. But they're the facilitators for allowing more money to be used to achieve home ownership. So anyway, hope y'all found this interesting and educational. Feel free to make any comments when we post this on Facebook if you have any questions, and you can continue to join us.
A couple other things too.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say houses are still selling. We've been posting the daily, 3 times a week, I believe we're posting what's going on in the last week in our local market here. I actually got into a contract today, made an offer on a home just a little bit below list price, and we got it accepted. Prices are not, at this point at least, on the downward trend,
right,
and homes are still selling at a good rate. It's still possible to see homes. So if you need any assistance at all, please don't hesitate. And if you have any questions or you want to contribute at all to our conversations every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 11 to 12, please feel free to do so.
Thanks.